The SEC is going to be holding their spring meetings this week.
Mm-hmm.
And the big topic of discussion is with the expansion of the SEC with Oklahoma and Texas coming into the league, do you go to 8 or 9 conference games? Now, SEC Commissioner, I almost called this man Roger Goodell, but I guess he's kind of like Roger Goodell in a lot of senses. But Greg Sankey was on the SEC Championship Baseball telecast yesterday, and I was listening to him, and quite honestly, I don't think he knows yet. I think he's going to let everybody give their decision, all these coaches, presidents, ADs, on should there be an 8 or 9 game schedule. Now, let me start off by saying this. I do think that the Big Ten, I do think that the Pac-12, I do think that a lot of schools not in the SEC are the ones complaining about this the most. They're the ones pointing and saying, you don't have 9 conference games. Well, let me just say this. Now, I kind of just mentioned this in just a second ago. Ohio State and Michigan playing Rutgers is not we played 9. It's not a hill that you need to stand on. Okay. Let me get that out of the way. When Georgia was going to play Oklahoma, when LSU plays Florida State, when Alabama historically plays a massive game week 1 at a non or a neutral site game, they're playing almost the same amount of Power 5 opponents that you are. Let's just get that out of the way. But here's where I stand. When you have 16 teams coming into the conference, I think you got to go to 9 conference games because of just the simple nature, Joe. If there wouldn't have been a hurricane, let me give an example. If there wouldn't have been a hurricane, LSU would have never played in Como since they've been in the league. Did you know that? They've never played in Como. The only way that they would have ever played in Como was because a natural disaster forced them during COVID to go to Missouri. That can't happen. You got to experience things in your own conference. That's why I'm open to a 9-game conference schedule. Now, here's the issue. Here's what I think Saban is doing. Nick Saban is being reported does not want 9 conference games. He wants 8. Now, let me also preface this. Nick Saban's not scared to go to 9 conference games. He's not. He won a national title when they played 13 straight Power 5 opponents. It's never happened. Never. In the history of college football, he did something that's never happened. He played a 10-game conference schedule in that too. Okay? I say that to say all this. I don't really care either way, to be real with you. Now, I do care, and I do want you to have 9 so you can go to Texas and you can go to Oklahoma and you have more venues and guys can, go and play or play teams, every team in their conference. I do kind of like the East and West being split right down the middle, though. Could you imagine a division with Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, and Georgia all in the East? Could you imagine a division or a conference that has in one division Texas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, LSU, Arkansas? That would be insane if you did split it down the middle. I don't know what they're going to do here, Joe, but I do think that they'll ultimately go to 9 conference games. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm completely in agreement with you on this. You can't expand to 16 teams and not play 9 games. You just have to eventually. Maybe not in 2024, but in a few years, they have to make that transition. There are too many teams, especially now with these protected rivalries. You now only have, it's 3 protected rivalries. You only have 5 other teams that you're rotating throughout your schedule. One, you need to play enough teams within your own division to make it comparable to show how good you are in the standings. Well, but more importantly, all the teams outside of your division.
Just to stop you, then keep going. Yeah. If they did the 3 permanent opponents, they would have 6 other conference games. They wouldn't have 5. So if they went down that model, it'd be 3 permanent and then 6. So that's the 9 conference schedule format. Continue.
Got it. I misspoke. But the whole thought here is there's too many teams. It's going to take too long to have played all of those if you're only on the 8-game format. You have to get around to play all of them. You just do. for
Yeah.
one, the entertainment aspect of it, like I'd love to get to see as many of these teams play each other, especially when Alabama and Oklahoma haven't had a lot of historical battles with any of these SEC teams. We need to get that. That's the whole point of bringing these new teams into the mix, is to create more diverse opportunities for matchups. If you're making the move to add teams, you got to adjust the schedule.
Can I tell you something you're going to hate?
Yeah, you love to do that. So,
well, it's not my opinion. It's not what I would want. It's not what I want to have happen.
Yeah.
So here's what I know. There's going to be 2/3 of the coaches in the SEC. Brian Kelly, Kirby Smart. Maybe not Kirby Smart. Maybe Kirby is going to be aligned with Nick on this one. Billy Napier, Jimbo Fisher, Sam Pittman. I all think that they're going to say yes to 9 conference games. Here's the thing, though. With the playoff expanding, the ability to have multiple teams get into the playoffs would be more beneficial for the SEC if you did 8 and or split the conference right down the middle, okay? What you don't want to have happen, and I think this is what Nick is trying to convince Greg Sankey of, what you don't want to have happen is you be like the Pac-12 or sometimes the ACC and cannibalize yourself. You don't want to do that. Because let me throw this scenario your way.
Okay.
We just got done talking about Georgia's schedule, right? What if Georgia has a scenario where in a month they play Texas, Alabama, LSU, and Oklahoma?
It's a difficult stretch.
It's more than difficult. Let me tell you what it is. It makes the Big Ten look like cottage cheese. It makes the Big Ten look like paper mache. There will not be a tougher road into a national title when Oklahoma and Texas come in here, and you have a scenario where you have to play all those teams. Joe, it's a realistic thing that can happen. It's a very realistic thing that can happen. When that goes down, a two-loss SEC champ is or a 2-loss non-SEC champ might be the most dangerous team in the country. It's not, I don't care what you say, it is not created equally. If you got to play those games, yes, it's not created equally. If you're Georgia and that's your schedule, Joe, if they go 2-2 in that, if they go 3-1, shit.
They're justified for being in the playoff. But the other thing I got to say, though, is that if they do make this move, they go to 9 and they have to play more difficult opponents. And you do get instances where teams that are making the playoff have a gauntlet of a schedule. Let's not act like they're not going to use those remaining 3 games on their schedule to place as easy of matchups as they can. Like they're going to deliberately pick easier matchups.
It's not
to
about
fill the roster, the schedule.
That I'm worried about, because you know who's going to do that too?
All the other conferences.
The difference is, I get that you have USC and UCLA coming into the conference, but historically, if you're Ohio State in a month, you have USC, Michigan, Rutgers, and Michigan State.
No, wait. I would argue that you could produce some pretty difficult stretches for those top teams. Now that USC and UCLA are in it.
Excuse me, Iowa.
No. Wait. You talk a big game about Penn State. Like if you have to play Penn State, USC, and then Michigan in a month span, like that's a difficult. It's maybe not as difficult as the SEC stretch.
Well, let me give you this. What's more difficult? Let's use Alabama, LSU, Georgia. So they would have to play. They will play Tennessee and Auburn. Okay. Imagine if they had to play Georgia and LSU in that same month.
Yeah, that's obviously more difficult.
No, it's not more. Joe, come on now. Come on now.
No, I'm saying the SEC one you just illustrated. That is obviously more difficult, but the Big
Penn
Ten can
State
now
would look like
produce difficult
cottage
stretches.
cheese. I would rather face Penn State than that schedule. Come on now.
Penn State did beat Auburn this past year, though. I'm just throwing that
Yeah,
out
but you know who else? Well, Auburn's not going to historically be that down. They're not.
Yeah, you're right. They're going to be a lot better in the future.
They have more national title appearances than Penn State and Michigan combined since 1998.
Yes.
Okay? So you can say what you want about Auburn. I dare you, when they're right, you go play in the Plains at 6:30 at night. You're not walking out of there.
Yeah, I look, I'm on the same page as you. I do really believe that it is going to really create a few teams that are going to have horrible schedules, just really hard schedules. And heck, you're bringing up the 2-loss teams that make the playoff. We might get a couple of 3 or 4-loss SEC teams that are deserving of getting in and don't because of where they end up finishing, because they had a couple of tough, close losses. But at the same time, I just think that they're going to find ways to counteract those difficult schedules. It's not hard for them to schedule. Heck, a lot of these SEC teams do this where they play a group of 5 team and 2 FCS teams. It happens all the time. It's not hard for them to set that up. They have the money to pay those programs to come play them so that they have plenty of easy warm-ups to keep them fresh without having to get brutalized throughout the year on a weekly basis.
But now they can't do that in November. They can't do that anymore. When you expand the way that you're expanding, you can't do that anymore. You can't play. Let me give an example. Alabama's notoriously known for playing the Citadel in November.
Didn't they play Austin P in
Yeah, they played Austin P, I think, this past year. And I don't remember if it was in November or when it was, but I'm pretty sure it was in the
November 19th.
November 19th. But I'm assuming, if I'm not mistaken, that was before the Iron Bowl, was it not?
It was the week before the Iron Bowl, correct?
So that they can't do that anymore. They can't do that anymore. And here's the problem that I have with what the Big Ten says, okay? The problem that I have is I would rather play, okay, their schedule if you got to play Rutgers.
Yeah, it's going to be, it is the Big Ten, the back end of that Big Ten standing is going to be a lot easier. Having to play Maryland. That's not daunting. I will say this, though. I'm actually looking at an Alabama schedule, and they quite literally did what I've illustrated here right now, because you know what? So their non-conference last year was Utah State. It was Louisiana Monroe.
Texas.
It was Austin P. And then their difficult non-conference game was basically their 9th SEC game, which was against Texas. So like that literally illustrates and plays into what I'm talking about here, where you have to play your 9 SEC teams. One of those, a bunch of these games are going to be difficult because they had to play a competitive Texas team, which is probably going to be comparable to the level of what they'll be like in the SEC for the first couple of years. Up and down, can put up a fight. They had to play Tennessee, which was a battle. They had to play LSU, which was a battle. But they were able to fill those gaps with FCS and group of 5 opponents.
Elk 70 says you get to play Vandy. Not everybody gets to play Vandy.
And also Vandy is more competitive, very arguably more competitive than Northwestern and Rutgers and Maryland. Their next season they're going to be harder to beat than any of those teams.
Agreed. And then here's the point about that. If you had, let me throw this out there. Joe, do you know what I would do as an LSU fan if I had to play in order Iowa, Nebraska, Michigan State? Do you know what I would do there? I would laugh.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you what I don't like have happening. Ole Miss, Tennessee, Arkansas, Bama. This team had to play that in order. Oh, and by the way, you got to go to Atlanta and play Georgia. Good luck.
We should petition to get a 1 year, just swap two teams just for 1 year. Just swap an SEC to Big Ten team and let's see what the results are. I actually would be really curious.
Please, God, put us in whatever division Wisconsin's in.
Yeah. That's
please,
not hard.
Dear God.
Yeah.
Please, sweet Jesus.
Swap LSU with Wisconsin and let's see what the results are.
I'll tell you what the results are. You ready?
National championship.
National championship. And if not, they're going to get in the playoff because they'll lose to Ohio State in the championship game. They're not going to lose. I promise you that they won't lose. All right.